A little boy and his parents are walking home from a movie, laughing and carrying on about the amazing cinematic experience they had just had. They were walking without a care in the world, not paying attention to their surroundings, playfully shoving each other, giggling and arguing over the best scenes of the movie, not realizing the darkness growing and surrounding them as the final lavender rays of warm light dissipated into the ominously cold indigo night sky. From the shadows, seemingly out of nowhere, a man appears. As if in slow motion, he and the glimmer of metal arising from his pockets met the distant streetlight, and it all comes into focus as his arm raises, gun in hand, suddenly pointing straight at the boy's father. The man demanded them they hand over their jewellery, wallet, and as he sized them up, he noticed the man's watch, pointed and said, "That too." The boy's father complies with this request, for what was his grandfather's watch, his wallet, and wife's wedding ring? The boy's father easily gave them up in exchange, he hoped, for the safety of his wife and child. But as the man's eyes gazed upon the boy, his gun followed his gaze, and the father reacted instinctively, which startled the gunman, who tightened his grip on the handle and reactively began to pull the trigger. Luckily, the father lunged like a Secret Service agent after a president and was at least able to get the gun to stray, make the bullet stray and miss both him, his wife and son. But unfortunately for him, the man also had a knife, which was now coming right at him just as the father had wrestled the gun from his hand. The boy stared in shock and horror, frozen solid and unsure how to act. His mother was screaming and crying frantically while attempting to plead with the man. Just like that, before the boy could process what was happening, time froze just as the knife was about to pierce his father's heart. For the way they were struggling, the knife was coming downwards straight toward his chest. He was still standing there, but everything else seemed frozen but him. The man's body was still frozen as well, but as soon as the boy looked over to him, he could see a dark shadow cloaking the man, staring him right in the eyes with a glowing, blood-red, piercing glare that was almost blinding, but still somehow dimmed by the shadow like an ethereal dark cloud. The boy stood there in disbelief as the shadow man began to speak in a soft, sultry, almost calming, but somehow still terrifyingly demonic voice. That was followed with whispers that were kind of like an echo, but not. "Boy, do you want your parents to live?" Yes, said the boy. "Please don't hurt them. Please don't kill them," he cried. He couldn't help the tears welling up in his eyes. The dark shadow soothingly, smoothly replied, "Quiet down. No need to cry. All you have to do is agree to a little contract and give me your soul. No big deal." "My soul?" the boy quivered. I don't know. The shadow's voice getting a little annoyed, but still not raising it. "It's a yes or no. Take it or leave it deal that you must decide right now. Or else I'll..." But before the shadow man could finish, the boy yelled, "Oh, okay, just please don't hurt my parents." The shadow man smiled. His glowing red eyes revealed to be black, with pupils so large it almost made them look completely black, but the red glare seemed to radiate from them, bloodthirsty, a look of pure evil. The shadow man held out his arm. It was almost like the man was within the shadow and not the other way round, like the shadow had no life of its own, but not really, as it was more like darkness incarnate. The man was still frozen one way, but the arm outstretched in another direction, separate from the man. The shadow continued in a more firm and serious tone, with the whispers growing louder like drums, but so many voices growing louder and bass pounding in your brain. "You must agree to the terms of the contract. You are to obey me and do whatever I tell you without question, and if you do not, I will take control and possess your body and do with it as I please. Shake my hand, and the contract will be complete." The Shadow Man stood there, expecting the boy's hand, to which he reciprocated under the immense pressure welling up from within. And as soon as his hand met the Shadow Man's, a surge of orangish-red golden light sparked and a piercing cold swept over him. It was so overwhelming, it was like falling into a frozen lake. His breath was instantly taken away, as he suffocated, hyperventilated, and was finally consumed by the darkness that was the shadow, and with it, the boy's once happy, carefree life. For now the boy was so cold and empty, yet he could not quite grasp what had just happened. All he could feel was that something was off, and there was now a void within him that he could not yet comprehend. Just as suddenly as it happened, within the blink of an eye, it's as if nothing ever happened. The boy, who was previously happy and carefree, was gone, and he stopped walking for a moment, stood in silence for a minute before his parents stopped too, looked back at their son, and said, "What happened? Are you okay?" But the boy interjected before they could finish with, "I'm just not feeling good. Can we go home? I just want to go home." The boy's parents looked at each other, and then ahead, resumed walking until they reached the house. As the boy followed them, he wondered if he had imagined it all, but the instinctive feeling in his gut that something was not right made him feel sick to his stomach, so he knew something had to have happened. The boy went about his normal nightly routine. His parents came to tuck him in, sang songs to him, read his bedtime story, the whole bit. As soon as they walked out the room, his mother reminded him, "Don't forget to brush your teeth." The boy, who was tired and ready to go to sleep, reluctantly walked into the bathroom. He was walking to the toilet first when he caught a glimpse out of the corner of his eye. It was him, the Shadow Man, smirking at him through the mirror with his eyes red with blood-curdling lust and an ominous glare. The boy was struck like a deer in headlights at first, but didn't have time to think, let alone react, before the Shadow Man spoke, this time from within his mind. That demonic, yet inhumanely smooth voice. "I want you to do something for me, boy. Kill your parents." The way he said it, so casual, as if he was telling him to take out the garbage. And in his disbelief, the boy responded, "Kill my parents? But you promised me you wouldn't hurt them. You wouldn't kill them." "Ah," said the Shadow Man, "but you forget. I said I wouldn't kill them at that moment. I never said I wouldn't ever kill them. And besides, you are who will. Not me," he quipped, with a widening grin. The boy now realized the shadow was now attached to him in every way, even his reflection. Like the shadow that cast the man, but not the other way round, but now latched upon the boy. The boy's chest felt like it was caving in. He felt that suffocating feeling again. He could barely breathe. His mind was whirling, but at the same time he realized the shadow could probably hear exactly what he was thinking. And that just made the anxiety slam him that much harder. That shadow, who was just standing there staring right back at him with that awful grin and those piercing eyes. He couldn't take it anymore. But before he had time to process the magnitude of this request, the Shadow Man continued, "Boy, you must remember the contract, for if you do not do as I say, you have given me permission to override and take your body to do with what I wish. Nothing you can do will stop me, and all the while you will be utterly helpless. It would just be like a window you are looking through upon yourself, but unable to control your body. Just witness what it does." You will be but a ghost looking down on yourself, looking down at yourself, unable to react or speak, unable to move. Only watch as I make their death brutally slow and painful to the point they will be begging me for mercy which will never come. The boy couldn't bear it anymore and began walking down to the kitchen. His legs felt like they weighed 100 pounds each. His body was so much heavier. It was as if he could barely move. He struggled under the weight and pushed himself, shaking and on the verge of collapse. Yet before he knew it, he was standing before his parents, knife in hand, watching over them as they slept. The Shadow Man was almost giggling. "Now, boy, if you stab them right through the heart, they will die quickly, and with the least amount of pain. Or, if you like, we could set them and the house ablaze, in which they would die quickly and painlessly before they ever woke." Tears began streaming down the boy's eyes, as he imagined all the ways he could kill his parents which were not really his thoughts, but the Shadow Man's. The boy raised his hand and was getting ready to strike. His hand shaking uncontrollably, he collapsed to the ground, weeping. "I can't do it. I just can't do it. Please, please don't make me do this. Don't do this to them." The Shadow Man was no longer giggling. Instead, his true colours showed for the demon he was. His anger glowed red hot, and suddenly the boy felt a burning, tingling sensation all over his body, as if he had been set ablaze. His throat felt like he was being strangled with fire, and he could feel the shadow demon beginning to take control of his body. So with his last ounce of strength, he grabbed the knife, pointed it at himself, and with both arms pulled as hard as he could, aiming for his own heart, but the demon was too fast. His laugh was darker, even more demonic than before. Just before the tip of the knife reached his abdomen, it stopped dead in its tracks, and it was then the boy knew he had lost all control of his body. He could see himself, but instead of himself he could see the dark ethereal cloak of the shadow demon. Just like the man, but upon himself. Now he was grinning, just like the shadow, except his face was twisted and contorted into an inhuman complexion, his eyes wide and bulging out of his skull, the blood-red glow masking his eyes that were dark beneath the shadows of the night, but that glint of piercing red bloodlust still clear as day. He was not himself. That was not him. It was something else entirely. The boy screamed, begged, and cried. Curled up in the fetal position, rocking back and forth, he watched helplessly. His mother began to wake up. As the boy screamed, so did she at the look of her own son. But before she could react, the knife came plunging down through her hand and into her chest. Unfortunately not deep enough, for she was still alive, so the shadow boy yanked the knife back out and plunged it back in, over and over and over. But the boy began to crack. Suddenly the father also started to awaken, and before he could flinch, the shadow boy flew at him, bloody knife in hand, straight through his eye and into his head. The boy just screamed and cried and pleaded, but there was no reasoning, just carnage, and it only got worse. The shadow boy only stopped to go into the garage and grab tools to dismember and bag the bodies up like garbage. Yet again he could feel that suffocating feeling overwhelming his senses. As if in a dream, the boy regained consciousness. He was covered in blood, overlooking the sight of his now dead parents. He fainted at the sight of all the blood, brains and guts streamed across the walls like strokes of a painting, except instead lines, spots and patches of blood splatter, with a touch of internal organs. Yet again he awoke to find himself in a pool of blood that wasn't his own. As if he was in a nightmare he kept waking on, only to find out he was still asleep, although he was not, and forced to face the sobering reality before him. He couldn't cry. He couldn't scream. All that was left was numbness. He couldn't feel anything. He walked into the bathroom and could still see the demon looking back at him. This time with a blank expression, as if he wasn't even paying attention to him. He turned on the shower and walked into it fully clothed, not even waiting for it to warm up. His legs collapsed and he began to get dizzy as the room whirled around him. He attempted to kill himself numerous times, yet he was not allowed to. The Shadow Man just stopped him every time, and only threatened to take over again if he kept trying. The boy is left, empty and hollow. He walked down and picked up the phone for his one last-ditch effort. He dials 911. Even though he feels his hand tightening and his other arm stiffening, he slams his head on the dial pad and hopes it dials out 1. When he hears the operator's voice, he is relieved, but the Shadow Man just laughs and says to the boy, "This is where I take my leave. It's been fun, boy. I'll see you in hell," he growled, and in an instant he was gone as fast as he appeared. The boy picks up the phone and provides nothing but the address to the operator, then drops the phone as it dangles over the stand, swaying as he walks away. He can hear the operator.
"Hello? Hello? An officer is en route. Stay calm. Help is on the way."
The boy quickly looks into the mirror to confirm and smiles. Thank God it worked. It actually worked. The boy walks back up to his parents' room and over to the bags. He uses the time he has left to arrange the pieces of his parents into doll-like figurines and lies beside them. He smiles as he hears the sirens approaching. Once he hears them at the door, he hugs his mother and his father. "I love you, Mum and Dad. I'll see you soon." As he plunges the knife into his heart, he falls back, lying between them as he lays dying, hand in hand, with his mom and dad, smiling.